Uh, Welcome back. Now we're coming to the end of our webinar, two presentations, and these two presentations are very, very important for India because between them, they have 90% of the market, Uh, both of them are based in Hawaii, but uh, the other company has their base in Florida as well. And our next speaker, Steve Arce, is not new to India. You know, he was here establishing a broodstock multiplication center for OI, and he was the guy who oversaw the implementation of that BMC. It is one of the state-of-the-art broodstock multiplication centers. It looks as good as a breeding program, and he was the one who set it up. And he was with OI for a long time, like all of the speakers. I mean, the preceding two speakers were also with OI, and Steve also started his career with OI, and then has been working with OI for the last few years. And he knows India very well. He has come here many a times, and he knows the problems here and in the farms, in the hatcheries and all that, and he's the right guy to talk about India. And his title is High Performance Breeding, Challenges and Opportunities for an Evolving Global Shrimp Industry, evolving with a lot of problems. So over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Robbie. Uh, Sorry, I'm having some issues. Is my screen visible?
Very much, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to start by thanking Aisha and Ravi for this opportunity to present, as well as the Hendricks Genetics team and our KB technical support staff for input for this presentation. As Ravi just said, the title of the presentation is High Performance Breeding, Challenges and Opportunities for an Evolving Shrimp Industry. So at Hendricks Genetics, the mission is supporting the global food challenge with high quality animal genetics. Hendricks is very aware that along with customers, we play a vital role in global food challenge, and our mission reflects this. The world is rapidly changing with consumer behavior, technologies, and sustainability goals, and we're committed to offering high quality genetic solutions across species and across the globe. Now, in terms of high quality, basically that means balanced genetics with a sustainable product in mind, not simply the fastest growing animals, but animals that make it to the end in an animal friendly way with an limited impact on the environment as the animal contributes to a high value chain. So how do we get there? We can look into the history of breeding briefly. In the 70s, there was fisheries. In the early days of animal breedings, the farmer would select the nicest looking animals and use them for the next generation. This is what is called mass selection. For thousands of years, this was basically the only way of genetic improvement. Okay. In terrestrial animals, during the decades of 1960 to 1980, multiple characteristics were measured for the selection of the candidates to provide the next generation of offspring. Breeding programs for fish, however, especially for salmonids, followed slightly later. Salmonid culture only started in the early 60s, but breeding programs for fish learned from developments in the terrestrial area and has progressed. In roughly the next 20 years, the animal breeding industry revolutionized with the introduction of BLUP, best linear unbiased prediction breeding values. Consequently, breeding programs were able to even further accelerate progress. With the discovery of mapping and of the whole genome, genomic selection based on DNA marked a whole new era, unleashing more potential than ever. And today we're applying genomic selection and researching the application of gene editing to help the industry solve the challenges easier, faster, or permanently. And importantly, it should be noted that as the genetic technology improved, so did the nutrition and production systems and management approaches to support the improved genetics now being offered to the commercial sector. And that's going to be true in the shrimp industry as well. With improved genetics comes a responsibility from all stakeholders to step up and help support the genetic potential of these animals now being developed. So Hendrix is investing heavily in aquaculture breeding. In 2011, they acquired land catch. Started in 2011 with land catch, and then they went to trout in 2014 and shrimp, konabay in 2017. In July of 2020, Hendrix assumed full control of konabay's breeding activities and has been working on infrastructure improvements and development of new genetic lines for the commercial industry. This presentation will focus on the breeding strategy and high performance technology implemented by Hendrix, as well as the current konabay product line and some management recommendations aimed at supporting the new genetics being offered. It'll also address the future plans and strategies of Hendrix and konabay and some of the major challenges to overcome and the opportunities that could be afforded to a developing industry supported by this new breeding technology. So this is the genetic engine that basically drives the genetic progress that we have. It's based on the data collection for growth, health, robustness, yield. The evaluations are based on genetic merit of individuals and offspring performance predictions. Animal selection is based on estimated breeding values and management of inbreeding for the next generation. If our predictions are correct, the next generation will be better than the previous. But of course, environmental considerations which may affect the health of the animal and some management adaptations will be required to fully realize and benefit from genetic improvement. We need to unlock the genetic potential through better management, including improvement in nutrition and technology. So Hendrix has a very firm grip on genetic selection, as evidenced by this slide. This is the process using advanced technology for high performance breeding and selection, from genotyping to data analysis and using genomic breeding evaluations to consistently improve performance potential in commercial environments. A major challenge to the industry are the varied environments and systems being used globally. It's very difficult to breed for such a varied landscape. As Oscar mentioned, standardization of the production systems will offer more control over environmental changes that are going to occur due to global warming and as opposed future challenges with pathogens and animal health. So standardization and having a clear target will really help breeding companies to focus in on productivity and profitability. So the next layer of selection is genomic selection. So this slide just briefly describes the genomic selection principle. There's a training population. We can link the markers with the phenotypes, choose the selection candidates. All that goes into the database that Hendrix has, and it goes to the selection decisions where we can perform better estimated breeding values. Basically using high density DNA information on top of pedigree records to push the accuracy of estimated breeding values to get the genotypic information that we need. This graph and table shows, I don't know if you can see it on the side, but the average genomic breeding value is 5.93 with traditional selection. And in the top right-hand corner, by implementing genomics, we had a greater than 8% improvement on top of the traditional family-based selection methods. So it's a very, very powerful tool that we are using. It's better used for disease, tolerance, or resistant traits, not so much for phenotype traits like growth. But it's a very strong and powerful tool that we're using consistently. In this case, it's for EMS resistance. We are also actively looking for challenge trials for EHP and white feces. We have not identified it since, but knowing now that Benchmark is on the ball on that, I'm sure that's going to drive us even further to identify appropriate disease challenges. But Hendricks is very aware that EHP and white feces syndrome are the major pathogens of concern right now, and we are looking at ways to help solve that problem. So breeding is cumulative process. It's very iterative, cumulative. Larger breeding programs will result in larger gains over time. A high level breeding program can provide 5% gain as opposed to 2% gain from smaller breeding programs. And this difference will only become larger over time. So at Hendricks, we're trying to focus on the right gains. So we're focused on balancing gains for each segment of the production chain. This is yet another challenge. It sometimes results in conflicting agendas. You know, what the hatcheries want isn't always what the farms want. But with overall benefit for the entire industry, Hendricks is looking to balance all these needs for a better industry and more improvement. More vertical integration of the industry may help with streamlining efficiencies. However, konabay and Hendricks recognizes the importance of the small traditional farmers in India, you know, including the social and local economic considerations in the production and value chain. But we're trying to balance the gains for hatcheries, farms, and processors, you know, focusing on the right traits to benefit all. So in terms of the economic return of genetic gains, you know, the return on investment and profitability by focusing on the right traits from hatchery to processor is an important consideration. Improving the technological and management strategies to adapt to new genetic lines by increasing the efficiencies will help to maximize profitability. As you can see, for the hatchery, it's fecundity, robustness. For the farmer, it's also robustness and efficiency, growth, and yield. And the processor, it's shrimp size and yield as well. So we're looking at the bigger picture for the whole global industry in terms of how to improve our breeding, how to improve the shrimp industry through breeding technologies. So this is basically just showing the performance is an interaction between genetics and environment. Genetics by environment equals performance. You have the genotypic value, environmental influence, which equals the phenotypic value, which in essence is performance. Now, the environmental influences of the BMC require high quality SPF broodstock, which I should mention require high quality SPF clean feed. It's never made sense to me how a hatchery can procure SPF broodstock and turn around and feed it wild polykeys, which are known carriers of disease. But there's also an opportunity there for a support industry to come up like SPF polykeys in India. It's not rocket science to develop these technologies, and Hendricks is working with some of the polykey suppliers to try to match up the right people to help support the industry in terms of the inputs here. For hatchery, quality feeds are very important to produce a strong PL. You know, Benchmark has NBay. Those feeds are top of the line. We recommend those to all our hatchery owners as well. High quality feeds are very important during the nursery stage. In the nursery as well. In my opinion, nurseries are more aligned with hatchery than grow out, and they should be treated as such with higher quality feeds. In the farm, management, line ponds, good technology, auto feeders, adequate aeration, all put a part in minimizing the stress in the production. Now, importantly, the message here is that understanding the critical role of environment influence and effective and sound management practices is key to maintaining healthy animals by minimizing stress and allowing the industry to exploit the genetic potential of the stocks being offered. You know, some of the challenges for hatchery owners, and I have to be quite honest here, is with a faster growing shrimp in our brood stock, you know, there might be a slightly shorter production window. Instead of 3 or 4 months, it might go to 2 or 3 months, because as the animals get larger, especially the females, the mating percentage will go down. over 85, 90 grams, the animals stop doing their mating behavior, and that's going to be an effect. But on the other side of that, there's an opportunity, because with a faster growing animal, the opportunity for an extra crop by the farmers produces another PL sales window for the hatcheries, another opportunity to sell their product, can increase prices for improved seed. And as I mentioned, the market potential for a local source of SPF live polykeys would be a great benefit to the industry. I'm going to move on now to our operations on Kauai. So this is our current system. We're taking excellent care of our breeders to maximize the genetic potential of our breeders. There's no disease pressure on our nucleus. It has the highest biosecurity possible. It's over 200 miles away from the closest shrimp farm. We have plastic lined round ponds with center drains, deep seawater wells, bird netting, aeration, auto feeders, and water reuse. In fact, we've implemented the use of Uravaca acoustic feeding system. It's an Indian company out of Vijayawada. It's an excellent product. We're getting those all installed now. We had a little hiccup with COVID getting the materials we needed here, but that's off and running. We also have a completely new algae production system to support the Nucleus Breeding Center larval culture operations. And we have plans and we have the finances now to start an in-house BMC on Kauai, which will be basically a tank-based broodstock grow-out system, which will afford us more control over the quality of our animals instead of what we're doing now with repeated harvest in ponds. It'll improve the cosmetic and physical quality of the stocks, which, by the way, is totally different from genetic quality, by reducing the stress and handling for multiple pond harvests. So that's something we've already started, and we hope to have that up and running within the next year. So there should be a big difference because, as all of you know, konabay has had issues with our shipping. Shipping from the outer island of Kauai to India has been the biggest challenge. And I'll get to that later at the end when I talk about BMCs. But I do agree with Jim Wyban that the AQF system has really helped India excel in shrimp production. But it should also be noted that so has breeding and genetic improvement. So, with the good comes the bad. We just have to find ways to step up and adapt to all these changes. Some of our more recent breeding program improvements include all natural matings, which we were not doing before, but we recognized that was a better way to do it, allowing us to use animals in their prime. Right now, we're moving towards complete non-ablation. We're at 50% now. As Oscar mentioned, non-ablation has benefits which have been peer-reviewed in the literature to enhance tolerance to pathogens in the environment and better farm production. We've also shifted our selection to faster growth in the earlier life stages, which is a key point for a lot of farmers, and also lets them predict how the total yield and harvest will be at the end. Robustness is something we're working on very strongly. We're continuing our robustness trials, trying to put animals in the worst conditions possible and choose the best, and then bring that into our breeding programs. We're also improving our disease challenge tests to EMS. We have a new lab we're using in Europe. It's affiliated with Hendrix. We're routinely checking that. We are looking, as I mentioned earlier, for appropriate disease challenges for EHP and white feces, and importantly, the implementation of genomic selection, and in the future, gene editing like CRISPR. And we've also started expanding our capacity in Kauai to include an R&D unit so we can address issues. As our Indian stakeholders and clients will know, we had some issues with our balance line because the speed line was just growing too fast. We'd have 80-gram females and 45-gram males. So we're looking at different breeding strategies now to try to fix that and solve that issue. That's something that is one of our top priorities, and we discuss it every week. So this is something that we're continually doing. We also have completely new management at konabay. Mr. Grant Kunishima is our new general manager, and he's doing an excellent job there of putting all the pieces together and helping us to have a better approach.
5 more minutes, Steve.
Only 5? Okay. Our breeding program objectives, basically, we have a nucleus breeding center with our genetic pool. We're focusing on high variation, low inbreeding, long-term viability. We have our multipliers, which are PPLs, which supply production, increase uniformity, and at the end for terminal production. I'm sorry, I have to go quite quickly here. But we're selecting our broodstock based on the new families, our tagging and SNP analysis, our pond trials, lab challenges, selection of candidates, where we cull animals, and we choose the top 1.5%, which we spin off to our clients. We also have an excellent data infrastructure facility in Hendricks for all the species that they work on. So that also helps us to keep up with the breeding work. So I got to get into our lines. So we are offering 3 lines now for the different production systems in the global arena right now. There's intensive production systems with controlled oxygen levels, high culture densities, medium, which is for our balance line, use of aeration, medium culture densities, and some biosecurity, and the low input systems, which are basically extensive with very little input. So our product portfolio, we have the balance line, which is balanced breeding for all systems. It's ideal for all system types with a high level of vigor. It excels in fast growth in all types of conditions, and there's enhanced reproductive performance due to hybrid vigor. We have our konabay strength line, which is tailored solution for challenging environments, selected for disease tolerance, specifically to white spot and EMS. And we test it and challenge our animals routinely. So our strength line is suitable, our speed line here is suitable for indoor RAS systems. It's a very sensitive animal, however, and we only recommend it to those facilities that have high biosecurity and best management in place. I'll quickly go through some of our data for the progress that we've been making in our hatchery. You can see when you look at the data from the balance line, the strength line, and the speed line. All this information is available for me directly in our product spec sheet, so I can give it to you if you're interested. But basically, we're finding that the balance line and speed line are actually very similar and close. And the explanation for that is that the speed line needs a higher level of management. And with that, I'll get into some of the management recommendations from the hatchery. Of course, you have to have quality broodstock, good quality nauplii, feeding, you have to have the quality feed, appropriate feed rates per day, nutrition, all the right parameters, all the water systems have to be in place with disinfection and high biosecurity. So this is just basically a slide on the importance of polychaetes. Everybody knows live polychaetes work much better than frozen. Polychaetes leach a lot, and like I mentioned, we are working with some of the polychaete companies to see if we can make the right connections to help improve polychaete culture to provide local live SPF worms to the industry. Konabay recommends a feeding table. Basically, feeding rates must increase. In maturation, we recommend at least 20 to 25% feed polychaetes. Also Artemia biomass, green mussels or oysters. Pellets are also part of it, but pellets are to a lesser extent important. Larviculture, I know it's difficult to read, but the bottom line here is basically we've seen that an increase in larviculture feed of about 25 to 30% is required to sustain the speed line. We have a big client, everybody's probably heard of him in Indonesia, Mr. Bong Tiro, excellent hatchery operator. He's told me he had to increase his feeding by 25% for konabay speed line because the animals are just growing so much faster. And he's also getting excellent farm results with that. So the importance here and the message here is you must increase feeding and improve feeding. Improve quality of feed is essential. That's another subject of nutrition in the feed companies stepping up to support these, but that's something we can talk about in the panel discussion. Sorry, Rod, just a few minutes here. Okay. So data collection, we have a technical team trying to collect data from all of our industries. And this is the major challenge for us because we have hatcheries and farms and we need them to provide accurate data back to the breeding companies. This only serves to improve the breeding decisions and help to support the industry as a whole. Stakeholders need to look at the big picture and not just their individual interests in sharing data. It's very, very difficult to get accurate data, but we're trying our best to get in there by using sentinel animals and some of the partnerships that we're establishing now in India to get this data back. And in terms of the future, we are constructing a distribution ecosystem, as we call it. Our nucleus breeding center is on the island of Kauai. We have a facility already in Ecuador called Microbio. It's a different model, just PL production. We also have a BMC in Indonesia now and a permanent one being developed in North Bali. We're getting excellent results from that. And we're developing one in India now. We just signed the papers for that. And we're looking at other opportunities for breeding centers in Vietnam as well, and possibly China in the future. So what we're doing here is we're trying to enable a local distribution ecosystem. And the benefits to India specifically is that it will simplify the import process without the AQF, even though I'm sure the AQF will have some health certification that we're going to have to follow. But the brood import risk is removed. Mortality, stress broods will be minimal. Konabay will handle the importation side of things from the PPLs from Hawaii to India. It'll allow more flexible stocking time of new broods and not linked to the AQF shipping reservations or shipping availability. And our genetic lines will become available for all shrimp hatcheries and not just the ones that can afford or manage imports. The benefits to the Indian farmers include that the product lines will be fully adapted to local farming conditions through environment and through enhanced data feedback, because we expect to have a larger presence in India with more staff to help us collect the data that we need to run our genetic engine. And stocks grown local in India will do better in India, and we've seen this already in Indonesia and Ecuador. In terms of wider benefits, we'll have a full company structure in India, enhanced customer contact and support, but genetics is only part of the story. Management practices, systems, and processes are the other part. Hendricks wants to help transfer knowledge learned in salmon and trout over to shrimp. Acknowledging these are totally different species, but there are lessons to be learned from these other aquaculture protein industries. And genetic improvement leads to shorter cycles and higher survival and yields. This transfers into bottom line improvements. Shorter pond times leads to less exposure to risk. And this is my last slide here. The positive impact, economic impact on your business with the increased growth, reproductive performance, survival, performance in high-tech systems with less risk and higher efficiency. This information is based on data we got from our balance line over the last 2 years. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time. And I'm sorry I had to go through so quickly, but I'm willing to share this presentation with anybody. I'm sure most of you have my email address already. So again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Excellent presentation, Steve. It was very elaborate and insightful. You seem to be ticking all the boxes, you know. I mean, whether it is reproduction or early growth of the animals or robustness and matching the broodstock size, you know, I mean, which you're considering in your research and development, you know. I mean, all the boxes seem to be getting ticked, you know, and let your animals speak in the field. And
Yeah, I've heard that.
yeah, and you're coming more near to us, and probably, you know, we can do away with all these issues of logistics, especially for you as you're shipping the animals all the way from Kauai. So
Right.
that has been a major bottleneck for you. Probably, you know, we can overcome that if you have similar kind of stock supplied from India. You know, I mean, your genetics are never questioned. You know, the only problem used to be with logistics. You know, I mean, the animals used to be so stressed. You know. While reaching the hatchery, and we used to lose out on the time. I mean, whenever we get your stock, we have to acclimate them for a longer period of time and all that. I mean, we can overcome all these problems if you have a good biosecure multiplication center. I mean, the trust should be on that, because We're a major shrimp farming country. We have disease all over, you know, and it could sneak through, you know. I mean, that's a bigger challenge for you, you know.
Well, the loss of
So
opportunity for the farmers due to our logistical issues was a major impetus for us to start the BMC concept, recognizing all the challenges. But there's other things. By having a BMC, we can train local staff, transfer technology. It lifts up the whole industry. The economic gain to the local community is beneficial as well. We saw that with the first BMC I developed for OI at Taz Park. That whole village just sprouted up after that facility came back into being. And that, to me, that was actually very rewarding, more so than the shrimp itself, to see the social impact to the local Indian community.